we're gonna start things off meeting a real-life experience of a yandere. Is that how you pronounce it, the anime people? I don't know. My following of anime doesn't expand anything beyond Attack on Titan, so... My sister is teaching my niece disturbing things. I usually stay out of other people's parenting business, but since this one involves my sister, my brother-in-law, who is also my best friend, and my niece, and what she's telling her is really concerning, I just thought I have reasonable grounds to meddle. What my sister Joanne did when she and Cliff got together was almost sabotage. She told other girls that he's gay. Those she didn't have a chance to lie to or didn't believe her, she'd beat up. As an older brother, it was my biggest shame that I wasn't able to stop her from bullying others. Eventually, they all got the message and stayed off Cliff, and they got together. When she wanted to sleep with him, he was reluctant, with religious upbringing, so she slipped something in his drink. The problem I'm facing right now is she's bragging, telling her daughter about all of this. She told my niece that if she wanted to go out with a guy, she had to be ruthless and deal with competitors. My sister said that she shouldn't be afraid to rough some idiots up and just take what you want. It worries me a lot that this would result in a massive fiasco, and I don't know what I can do about it. So can we agree that this was, you know, grape? Like this was a very tensely obvious sign of grape. I mean, popular comments saying it straight here. It sounds like Cliff is a victim of your sister's abuse. Does he need help getting out of that situation? He should take his daughter and leave. Does he have family he can stay with? And oh, this is the worst bit. OP says, Cliff was really upset back then about what she did, you know, tarnishing his own religious practices, completely disregarding his wants or consent. Consent! Which is perfectly understandable, but he said he still loves and wants to be with her. His parents would take him and daughter, but he wants to stay. And yeah, that's because he essentially has Stockholm Syndrome and has been beaten down by your sister's constant abuse. She is a literal monster. You need to cut contact with her for the sake of your daughter and let everyone know exactly why. I don't care about your family blood ties or anything. You want to relate to this blood? This tainted blood? Oh, it gets worse. So someone asking how the hell is this sister not disowned by the family? Turns out the only reason OP didn't tell anyone is because Cliff begged him not to. Like, dude, okay, this is why we need to agree that our masculinity in society is rather toxic. Like, your fear of coming across as some sort of shameful victim in the circumstance, Cliff. Get over it, man. You are a victim. Accept it. I'm giving you some tough love, mate. Come on. Ooh, here's a hot take. You were honestly just as bad as your sister. You knew all of this was happening to this poor dude, and you let it happen. Now he's trapped in this relationship, and you're just allowing it to happen. All of you should never be allowed kids ever again. And Cliff needs to take your niece far away from you and your sister, because both of you are enabling monsters. I mean, yeah, well, Cliff again did beg him not to tell anyone, but then again too, like, this is one of those circumstances where it's like as if someone's saying to you that, hey, I'm gonna end myself, please don't tell my family. I wouldn't be able to handle it. Like, I kind of feel like if I'm even more obliged to tell someone. I mean, assuming here it's quite clear to see that Cliff knows what happened to him. He knows what happened. This isn't just an oblivious man thinking that his wife was just super horny and couldn't control herself. No, which, you know, even that is still technically grape, so... I don't know, what do you think? Do you consider this a situation where they should just keep their mouths shut? Because, hell, maybe they could just talk to their daughter about the fact that you shouldn't see my sister as some sort of inspiration. Let this be a lesson to you. Just because a girl is into you doesn't mean she's actually, you know, considerate for you. But we're going to move into something that's probably almost just as messed up. Not in so much of a way that it's harming someone else, but when you have been thrown information towards your way, specifically knowing about the circumstances of someone they themselves are not aware of. What do you do with that info? Do you tell them, or do you let them live in ignorant bliss? Today I fucked up by reading too much about my wife's condition. So for starters, my wife, 24, and I, also 24, have been married since we were 21. We met when we were 16 and dating since age 20. I know, we were young, whatever. That's irrelevant. Just months before we started dating, devastating. My wife suffered an extremely severe tonic-clonic seizure and subsequent coma, and thus began a long string of medical complications and doctor visits with basically zero diagnoses. A year into our marriage, she suffered another grand mal seizure after a few weeks of light myoclonic seizures. After the second big seizure, we were fortunate to meet with some world-class neurologists and get her diagnosed with a rare form of epilepsy. However, in these instances, rare usually means we really don't know what is causing this. Because many of the scans used to diagnose epilepsy need to be scanning the brain during the seizure, and because her seizures were so rare, we didn't have a good opportunity to pin down which specific seizure disorder she was suffering from. She was placed on medication which seemed to end the myoclonic seizures, quick waking spasms in only one muscle or muscle group, and left us very hopeful. We were told by the doctors that, although scary, the seizures were harmless, and that she most likely would see no other long-term health problems, and if medicated, she may never have another seizure again. So it starts with good news. I felt such a relief knowing that the seizures were being treated and that they wouldn't threaten her life. In the 2 years since, we have been so happy and have been really enjoying the first years of our marriage, traveling, making big plans, dreaming about kids, etc. About 2 days ago, she noticed some slight muscle spasms and difficulty walking. This came as a shock because she is on seizure medications and shouldn't be feeling those symptoms. Because it's the weekend, we haven't been able to see a neurologist yet, but being the med student and inquisitive person I am, I got to researching about her specific symptoms. In the past, we were so ignorant about epilepsy that we didn't really know how to even research because we were unfamiliar with all the medical jargon. But I have since begun studying medicine and done extensive research into different forms of epilepsy, and I wanted to be prepared in case another seizure occurred. Well, until 2 days ago, my wife had not experienced myoclonic seizures since she got her medication, so I had no reason to research about them. So I will preface with what comes next. There is a lot of hope mentioned in the comments, so just keep that in mind as this gets depressing. Today, while researching how to treat myoclonic seizures, I discovered that almost all forms of progressive myoclonic epilepsy come with a dramatically shortened lifespan, as well as severe cognitive and motor decline. Some people die as quickly as 8 years after symptoms begin. Now, my wife has not been diagnosed this specifically, so I do not yet know for certain if she has a progressive disorder or just simple epilepsy. However, all of her symptoms match a progressive diagnosis, and one key trait is that medication stops being effective at preventing the myoclonic seizures after a year or so. And, well, here we are, 2 years on medication, with seizures coming back. I know I'm not a doctor, and I really hope that this is a case of hypochondria by proxy, but the reality is that I am well versed in medicine now, and it seems that her disorder has all the markers of being progressive. I was sitting next to her on the couch when I read this and had to fight back tears because I didn't want to say anything to her. One of the triggers for seizures is extreme stress, and I couldn't bring myself to tell her what I had discovered for fear it would worsen her condition and also put her in intense emotional turmoil. Also, don't want to diagnose her before a neurologist can, on the chance that I am wrong. However, now every time I enter a room with her, all I can think about is how long we have left, and I have to stifle the tears again and hide my face to try to avoid speaking so she won't hear my voice crack. We are already in mountains of medical debt, and thinking about watching my very best friend and the angel of my life deteriorate physically and mentally until she dies is breaking my heart to the point that I just don't know what to do. And I can't even talk to her about it. The only reason I'm writing this is because I can't tell anyone about it. I'm just angry at everything, and I don't know how I can hide it till her next appointment. So yes, an absolutely tragic thing to come across when you're trying to find ways to support and understand what your partner's going through. I can imagine if any of us have someone we hold dearly, to know that this is happening to them, it's horrible, because you can't do anything. So I'll go off this comment here, that's the top one, and I think it really brings into the reality that a lot of the time these sort of things can be heavily influenced by your own perception of them. Okay, let me start off with, I am very sorry this is happening, but I hope I can help, even if it's a little. I was normal until I turned 21, and then I had a slew of odd issues. I was sent to a rheumatologist and got an answer and started different medications with some success. Flash forward 4 years later, and I was deteriorating rapidly. After what seemed like forever and numerous tests, I was diagnosed with a rare disorder that is fatal if not treated. I was 25 and felt like my life was over. I had just gotten engaged and bought a house, and I felt like everything was stopping. The other downside was to find out if they did get my disease under control, most people only go on to live for another 5 years. Again, that's if they got it under control. So they were like 5 years maximum was their life expectancy. After 3 years of chemotherapy, I was doing well. I am 33 now, and I am still here. I've had ups and downs, and lately more downs, but I'm here. I'm surviving. I know what warning signs to look for. I listen to the doctor. I get my labs done, and so on. Don't let this sink you. Be strong and be strong for her. Get her to the neurologist and go from there. Once you know what you're dealing with, asking all the questions, find support groups, find clinics, wherever that are known for treating said disorder or disease. Do whatever you need to, but don't let the negative thoughts, the unknowns, and fear take over. Be strong, and my thoughts are with you. And this one that's more straight to the point. I gave up looking medical advice online and through studies. I had 3 open heart surgeries 23 years ago due to a heart defect. According to Google and many articles, I should have died when I was 18. I'm 23 now, and according to my cardiologist, I'll live to be an old person. So there you go. They had 3 open heart surgeries when they were a little frail baby, and they're still kicking it strong. I've got good hopes for your wife. But no, I'm sure there's many stories out there that people can mention that, yeah, the human body is pretty impressive and capable. There's a reason why we are still learning more and more about the human body as technology develops. Of course, there's the fact that, yes, many people do die from these sort of things, the stuff that's out there, the diseases and disorders and diagnoses you can get. But there's also many people who survive them, and you should never doubt for a second that you could be one of those people. I'd like to now introduce you to someone who should be a great example as to why you should never help others. Don't do it. Don't care about them. Someone's got a poor life, too bad. So it's all about you only. Best friend was kicked out of her parents' house, is now living with mine, and I think I understand exactly why her parents didn't want her at home anymore. So my 23 female ex-best friend, who's 28 female, let's call her C, is staying with my parents. She came from Tennessee to Kentucky? I don't know your state, sorry. The household consists of my mum and dad, my little brother and his wife, 18 and 19, and their baby. There are 2 kitties and 3 dogs, 2 of which stay in mum and dad's room and the other rooms from my brother's room to the kitchen and back occasionally. Kitties just do their own thing. Her mum and dad kicked her out of the house over 6 months ago. She said it was all her mum's idea and the dad wasn't very happy about it, but didn't resist. I was never told why, but we know her parents are planning to move to Florida, so I assumed they just wanted to make the process smoother and save money. Since she was kicked out, her and her daughter, I think she's 8 this week and is heavily autistic, had nowhere to go, and so I consulted my family, and they agreed to take her in. She was my best friend after all. I trusted her, so they did too. She'd promised to put food in the house to replace whatever she ate, and as payment for letting her stay, she did that for a couple of months and stopped. I think we just need to be reminded here, because I have a feeling the story's going to go on and mention that the parents are kind of a-holes here. This is a 28-year-old with an 8-year-old child. They've made a promise and already broken it. So, let's see how much worse it gets. It gets worse. For a couple months, little C and C were staying in the living room. I'd get mild complaints over the phone in privacy of little C making noise at 3 a.m. or so, like every night. Turns out, C would send her to bed at 5 p.m. each day so C could focus on playing Final Fantasy XIV and voice chatting with her friends uninterrupted. This, obviously, resulted in a hyper, fully rested 7-year-old bouncing about the house in the early hours because she had just taken a nice long rest. All before the household was awake. She'd slam the fridge doors and stomp around and whatnot, whatever. Kid stuff. Of course, I don't blame the little one. She's hyper and wanted something to do. I would also be told of little C coming to my parents for attention and begging for them to play with her or spend time with her or feed her, because C did not wish to cook or play with her daughter, opting to play the Final Fantasy game instead. It was left all up to my parents to do everything. Oh, and it gets worse. Now let me set this clear real quick. We've recently discovered that my mum's health is in decline. She's having multiple kinds of seizures now, at the point where she is having short-term memory loss and amnesiac episodes where she loses a few hours of each day. She explains things to me several times, as if it's the first time. She also has a very weak heart, and a cardiologist stated, "I'd be surprised if you haven't had multiple small heart attacks in the last few months." And yet, my mother was being made to essentially care for little C. Nobody said anything to C because she struggles with depression and just got kicked out of her home without a good explanation. We understood and went along with things until little C went to live with her dad. 2 months of, mostly my mother, taking care of my best friend's hyper, loud, screaming autistic child so she could relax and play some games with friends. She is now currently with her dad and his girlfriend and being taken care of properly by a parent, so don't worry. So one innocent bystander in the situation down, now to get rid of the floater. Now with little C gone, C is able to focus on Final Fantasy hard. She's on it from wake to sleep. Most nights she's up till 6 a.m, then wakes again at like 3 p.m. Voice chats with her friends, raids, she's always doing something, hosting art parties and whatnot. She's literally sitting there in her chair in the living room making ruckus while everyone else has to work around her. Which is fine, that stuff is easy enough to ignore. Hell, I acted almost the same way all my life, except I hid away in my room. Everyone is used to that in the household anyway. It's her volume and tone that's an issue. I'll get to that. She's eating their food, using their hygiene products, driving the electricity bill up, and refuses to do her own laundry, leaving it again to my mother to do for her. C brings in hundreds of dollars in food stamps due to her partial custody of little C, who the government has no idea she's not exactly taken care of right now. And C was returning the food she ate. At least she was for a while. She recently stopped doing so. She never claimed she wasn't bringing food stamps in anymore. She just stopped offering to replace what she used, and would go out on personal grocery runs for Monster Energy, Pocky, Sriracha peas, and other whatnots. God, it's always those things, isn't it? All of these things which have packaging that becomes trash, and trash she refuses to walk 3 meters to put into the kitchen garbage. She'll leave it strewn around her desk, which gets knocked into the floor, to stay, to be picked up by, you guessed it, my mother, when C is asleep or away. When it comes to the animals, my parents and little brother both have informed me that, when nobody else is in the room with her, they will hear her yelling and cursing at the cats because they freaked her out or bumped into a cord and messed up her game. I've also been informed that on occasion when everyone is out and C is home, they come home to the dogs cowering or acting upset, like they'd just been punished for something and they're ashamed or even scared. One of the dogs, one day, even had puffy red eyes and nobody could figure out why. It went away the next day. Only C was in the house with them, so what is anyone to think? Please get a camera on that. I want a camera in this household, please. We need to see what she's been doing. That is shady as hell. Last month or so, C has been complaining to me about bed bugs and roaches. Now, to be fair, we have had those, both, even at the same time, but they haven't been a problem for the past 3 years. It's only her who mentions bugs, and nobody else in the household corroborates. Nobody else in the household is experiencing bug problems. She'll sit up all night, on Discord voice chat, on Final Fantasy, talking to her friends about how she hates it there, how filthy it is, how nasty it is, how she has no food to eat, how she's treated badly, how the place is covered in animal hair and dander, how she can't move around in the house because it's so cluttered, and how so very upset and broken she is that she has nothing to her name, and she's so depressed and wants affection. She's been getting loads of packages sent to my mum and dad's place, daily DoorDash deliveries from the friends she's talking to online, making more mess. Gifts, I'm sure, from the people she's swindling into thinking she has it so rough. And another thing! C, my best friend at the time, was invited to my wedding. I wanted her to be there. It was important to me, but when I asked her, she told me she'd be back in Tennessee for a month, cat-sitting her parents' kitty because she was neutered and had to be watched the entire time while they were apparently out of town for an event that she couldn't tell me about. I later learned she was in Tennessee for a week taking care of the cat. The other 3 weeks she was gone, she was in Georgia. She was staying with a man who she only knew from Final Fantasy and had met only one time. Now, isn't that an interesting development? She'd only gotten out of a long-distance relationship a few weeks prior. Now, C is planning to move out with said man. C is being whisked away from a nightmarish hellscape, abandoned and shunned by her parents, and living in a dingy trailer to move into a new apartment with Mystery Man from Georgia. She's planning to leave the big stuff with my family, her bed, which is weird, her tall bookshelf, and some other stuff, all for them to deal with on their own. My brother and mum have told me that silverware is going missing as well, and small things like toilet paper running out unusually fast. And planned meals for my dad, who is on a prescribed diet, are also going missing or being eaten. Hopefully, I can get her to hang out with me one day before she leaves so I can confront her about this in a meaningful way. I need her to come clean and realize her own destructive behavior so she doesn't ruin this poor dude's life right out the gate. Right now, she seems unstable mentally, so I want to wait until she has all her affairs in order before I have a real conversation with her. So I'm gonna go straight out the gate here and say, this is all your fault. Like, there are some people who are just so terrible and pathetic that's just their existence now. This was a long story, so we'll just go straight to what this top comment's saying because it just nails everything for us. OP, you need to focus on extracting this person from your family. Her belongings can either go into storage or she can sell them. Either way, they need to go too, or she will use them as leverage to get back in there when her latest white knight kicks her out. You are the one who introduced this monster into their household, and you have a responsibility to stand up to her now and help free them from her. Or you need her to come clean and realize her own destructive behavior? Not going to happen. That ship sailed. You're imagining she will see herself what she is, change, and become your friend again instead of the horrible, cruel, selfish leech that is making your mother's time on this earth way worse than it should be. But she's way deep in denial and manipulation. Stop trying to save this animal-abusing blech. You owe it to your family to put their needs first. Yeah, I mean, I get feeling sad and worried about the sake of the new guy coming in. But this is the kind of person where it's every man for themselves. Let him deal with her now. You just change your locks, kick all her stuff out, don't even contact her ever again. Just go no contact. Nah, she doesn't deserve it from the way she treated your family. Let's now move on to, look, there's dead weight. But these people seem to have a chance. My son and his wife are driving me nuts. My son is 19 and he's married. He and his wife got married without telling anyone because they both feared that nobody would understand their love. And somehow they felt doing it like that would be extra romantic. After my son was fired from his job in November, he and his wife begged me to let them live with me and while they figured everything out. His wife wasn't working because she assumed they could both make it on whatever he made. We're now on month 4 of this and I'm stuck with 2 teenagers who sleep until noon or 1 p.m. What little job hunting that does get done is done by my son. It's just a lot of lying around in bed, it seems like. Anytime I try and motivate them a little, I'm met by my son's wife, who brings up the not-so-great argument that because he's my son, I have to support us, otherwise I'm a bad father. And of course, when I try and converse with her, she goes and whines to my son that I'm being mean to her. As much as I want them out, I don't think I can do that since neither of them have incomes. So here's the thing. You don't get to play the I'm still a child and you have to take care of me card while also trying to play the I'm an independent adult and I can make my own choices like getting married. Woohoo! Don't work for you here no more. I'm sorry. If I was the dad here, I'd genuinely just be cutting off any freedom of services that they can have in this household until they're making enough of an income to actually invest towards it. Call it harsh, but bring the modem cable to my room, only turn the internet on when I need to use it. If they so desperately need the Wi-Fi, they can just go to a cafe, go to a library, get a damn job. I know that sounds boomerish of me. It's not even a word that people still use anymore. But come on, lady. Oh, he's your son. You have to take care of them. No, he can want to take care of you. And yes, there's that parental obligation. That don't equate to someone who's 18 versus when they're like, 4. I mean, this lady was clearly just trying to get a free ride from this kid. And now that she can't get it from him, she's going to try and get it from the dad. So what do you expect? Get off both your butts and get a job. I think that's it. Am I wrong? Is that wrong? Feel free to tell me if I'm wrong. I'm genuinely open to it. I traumatized a childhood bully and honestly don't care that I did. Without going into too much detail, I had a rough childhood. My mom had a psychotic breakdown, kidnapped my brother and I was 9, he was 11, and it just kind of turned into a statewide manhunt for all of us. Even before then, our family wasn't really part of the neighborhood. Our dad kept trashed cars, a fridge, and all sorts of other, they definitely sell drugs, kind of stuff, so he could pretend he was important. My mom was always some kind of sociopath, manic depressive bipolar 2 officially, and managed to estrange both my brother and I from basically every kid. I literally wasn't allowed to be friends with someone because she said she was 8 years old. Bullying was super common with that school, and I did my best to be a pacifist because I was and still kind of am a hippie despite everything. Violence begets violence and all, but after the messiest divorce that my therapist is the only one privy to know the details of, bullying got ramped up. My scary as hell mum wasn't there to go psycho, and I was an easy target. I was overweight, unhygienic, messy, and just in full neglect and depression. I also had some neuro problems that made it hard for me to really keep myself together. Just a series of neglect of all kinds, basically. I got Schmidt all the time. All the time. At school, at home, from kids and adults, the full shebang. Down the line, the bullying took a turn to how I could never be loved. People would ask me out as a joke and say things about my parents. Those things struck a nerve. Just a really strong, deep nerve. I think only one of the bullies actually felt bad after a while, and it subsided once it came out about what my mum did to us and what she had planned to do to us before we were taken from her custody. But there was this one kid, a true piece of work that wouldn't let up. I didn't like eating lunch at that school, and the fridge only ever had turkey slices and apples and other things that Dad liked that no one else did. So eventually, I just didn't eat lunch and would just sit in the hall on the floor and read. It was a little moment that I had to myself where I could do what made me happy. This little guy decided that I wasn't allowed to even have that moment. He came over and started in while I was reading a book, Son of Rhubarb if I remember right, and was just going on and on until he brought up my mother and how he wished she'd kept us, knowing full well that our mum had intended on ending us and then herself. It wasn't a secret. I'd told a friend who ended up spreading it around because drama, I guess. At that point, I was done. I took a deep breath, marked the page I was reading, and using my softball-trained arms to slam this hardcover book into the side of his head. It tore out his eyebrow piercing, he bit his lip, and had a tooth knocked loose, and he was bleeding. A lot. Like, a lot. I think he had to go to the hospital because I didn't see him for a week afterwards. People seem to realize that I have a limit and the physical power to give someone brain damage if I chose to. I was a strong and big kid, 5'10" at 10 years old. Praise be to the genetic gods. The next time I saw the kid, he would flinch if I moved too fast and would jump if someone came up behind him for any reason. I still have that book, and it still has a bloodstain across the front from the hit. Every time I see it, I smile a little, because for the first time in my life, I had defended myself. A great point in the comments. My only issue here is that you haven't framed that book and put it on display. You're a hero. That piece of garbage will never forget that day. He will be better from your tough love. Violence is never the answer. It's a question, and the answer is yes. Yes, bully the bullies. I always love the totally unquestioned retaliation instinct. So productive and thoughtful. Shut up! This kind of logic comes from the kind of person who never actually experienced severe bullying, especially if this is their retaliation after the constant harassment they were experiencing. Oh, but their argument gets better. Nobody do anything harmful to anyone anywhere unless that is required to stop them from doing more harm, as in the case of Russia. At no point should you like having to hurt them to defend yourself. It's not about liking that they're hurt, it's about liking that there's a retaliation. We don't want the OP here to beat the other kid to a pulp. We like that the other kid has got their just desserts. And we like that it was a simple, singular action that has caused this child to suddenly reveal their fragility. Because the truth is that there are a lot of people like this little Schmidt that the only way they actually learn to not be an a-hole to others is to get just dunked on. We need to stop shaming shame. Shame is good. Shame is healthy. It's the way we deliver shame onto others that makes it a problem. Maybe if this kid learned to humble himself, he wouldn't have needed OP to do it for him. Well, my saucy sauce pots, that is the end of today's video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoy these stories like I enjoy you. As always, let me know your thoughts down below. And until next time, you've been amazing. My name's been Jack. Bye-bye.